Hey there, history buffs, and welcome back to the Gossip Historian, where we spill tea like it's 1773. Today, we're diving headfirst into the scandalous chronicles of a certain French maiden who changed the course of history. Yes, you've guessed it. We're talking about the one and only Joan of Arc. So buckle up as we unravel the truth and myths surrounding this enigmatic figure. Was she just an average teenager with a divine calling? Or was she a manipulative mastermind? Stick around to find out. Ever wondered how a 17-year-old gets to command an army? Well, Joan of Arc did it, and she didn't even have a resume. Right, let's back up a bit. Picture this. You're a young lass in the early 15th century, living in the French countryside, and you start having visions. Not your average daydreams about the latest farmyard gossip or what dress to wear to the next village fete. Oh no. These are visions from saints, instructing you to support Charles VII and help recover France from English domination. Pretty heavy stuff for a teenager, huh? Now, I don't know about you, but when I was 17, my biggest concern was figuring out how to convince my parents to extend my curfew, not saving a country from foreign rule. But Joan, bless her courageous heart, decided that she was going to follow these divine instructions. She didn't just pop over to the local recruitment office and sign up. Oh no, she went straight to the top. In a world where most teenagers are trying to balance school, social life, and maybe a part-time job at the local fast food joint, Joan was trying to balance visions, voices, and a whole army. Seriously, even the most ambitious high school class president has got nothing on this girl. But hey, it's not like she was just handed the keys to the kingdom. She had to convince a lot of skeptical, battle-hardened men that she was the real deal. And she did it. She led an army, she won battles, all while dealing with the 15th century version of teenage angst. So let's pause for a second here. Was Joan of Arc some kind of divine teenager, anointed by the heavens and destined for greatness? Or was she just a normal girl with an extreme case of overachieving? I mean, talk about setting the bar high for the rest of us. So, Joan of Arc, the divine teenager who heard voices and commanded armies, or just your average teen with a severe case of overachievement? Joan of Arc, the fashion icon of the 15th century, bravely defied gender norms by wearing men's armor. Talk about a statement piece. Now, if you're thinking, no big deal, I wear my boyfriend's hoodie all the time, let's add some context here. In the 15th century, wearing armor was not just about protection. It was a symbol of power and masculinity. And here comes Joan, a simple peasant girl, sauntering around in full-on battle gear. It's like turning up to a black tie event in a pair of neon spandex and a tutu. It's bold, it's daring, it's unusual. But let's not forget, Joan was not just making a fashion statement. She was on a divine mission, or so she claimed. And when you're taking orders from the big guy upstairs, you don't just put on a pretty frock and hope for the best. You gear up, ready for battle. Now think about the modern fashion trends. The oversized t-shirts, the boyfriend jeans, the dad sneakers. Are we all just channeling our inner Joan of Arc? Are we subconsciously trying to emulate her boldness, her defiance of societal norms? Or are we just really into comfy clothes? Maybe Joan was the original influencer, setting trends before Instagram was even a twinkle in its creator's eye. She was rocking the power suit centuries before it became a staple in every working woman's wardrobe. But then again, maybe Joan just really liked the feel of cold metal against her skin. Maybe she enjoyed the clank 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 sounds her armor made when she walked. Or perhaps she just enjoyed the perplexed looks she got from everyone around her. Joan of Arc, canceled before it was cool. Her trial could be likened to a 15th century version of an intense public dispute. Now before we go further, let's get one thing straight. We're not talking about a cancellation in the Netflix binge-watching sense. No siree. This is far more sinister, the type of cancellation where you end up on the wrong side of a stake. Picture this. Joan, a teenager who'd boldly led an army, championed a king, and rocked a killer bob cut, found herself at the center of a medieval meltdown. And folks, it wasn't because she'd failed to live up to her hype as a military leader. No, Joan's cancellation was more about medieval politics, religious tensions, and a serious case of wardrobe envy. She was accused of heresy, which back in the day was the equivalent of being called out for a major social faux pas. But instead of keyboard warriors hiding behind screens, Joan had to face a court of stern-faced clergymen. You think dealing with online trolls is bad? Try handling a group of men in robes who haven't seen sunlight in weeks. And the charges? They were as ridiculous as pineapple on pizza. Joan was accused of everything from cross-dressing to sorcery. It was like the medieval version of someone digging up your embarrassing middle school posts. Except, instead of a few awkward likes and shares, Joan's trial was a matter of life-death. The trial was a classic case of he said, she said, with a dash of God said thrown in for good measure. Joan maintained her innocence, but it was a losing battle. The court was as unbiased as a referee at a home game, and Joan, well, she was the visiting team. And so Joan was condemned. Not for being a bad person, but for being different, for being outspoken, for being, well, Joan, in a world that loves to point fingers and jump to conclusions, she was an easy target. In the end, Joan was burned at the stake, a stark reminder to all that no good deed goes unpunished. Joan of Arc, the only person in history to go from army general to saint. Talk about a career pivot. Now that's what I call a glow-up. And no, I'm not talking about the kind that requires a 10-step skincare routine and a personal trainer. I'm talking about the kind that involves divine intervention, a dash of martyrdom, and a sprinkle of posthumous canonization. After all, who needs a PR team when you've got the Pope in your corner? Joan of Arc, or should I say Saint Joan, was canonized in 1920 by Pope Benedict XV. She went from being a French military leader to a convicted heretic to the patron saint of France. That's like going from reality star to A-list celebrity, but with more miracles and less Botox. Speaking of miracles, let's talk about Joan's canonization process. It usually requires at least 2 verified miracles. Now, I can barely make it to the gym twice a week, and Joan's over here performing bona fide miracles. But it wasn't all halos and heavenly choirs. Joan's path to sainthood was a rocky one. She was on trial for heresy, which is like being on trial for being too fabulous. And we all know how that ended. Spoiler alert. It involved a stake, some firewood, and a very literal interpretation of going out in a blaze of glory. But like any true A-lister, Joan knew how to make a comeback. 500 years after her death, she was declared a saint. Now that's what I call a posthumous redemption arc. So, Joan of Arc, the scandalous teenager turned saint. It's a transformation story that outshines any makeover. Only instead of a brand new look, Joan got a halo and a direct line to the big guy upstairs. Talk about an upgrade. So what have we learned about Joan of Arc? Well, she was a teenager who heard voices, wore men's clothing, led an army, got burned at the stake, and then became a saint. Just your average life story, really. This young French gal, born in the early 15th century, was basically the medieval version of a rebel without a cause. Instead of spray painting graffiti on castle walls or rebelling against her parents, she decided to take it up a notch. You know, just the usual teenage stuff like leading armies into battle and turning the tide of a war. No biggie. Then there's the whole hearing voices thing. Most teenagers just have to deal with nagging parents or teachers. But Joan? Nah. She had to deal with the voices of saints giving her military advice. Talk about pressure. I mean, imagine trying to do your algebra homework while St. Catherine is whispering battle strategies in your ear. And let's not forget her wardrobe. While most girls her age were obsessing over the latest in peasant frock fashion, Joan was strutting around in men's armor. That's a bold fashion statement, even by today's standards. But Joan didn't care about societal norms. She was too busy being a total boss on the battlefield. Of course, it all came to a fiery end when she was burned at the stake. A bit of a downer, but hey, at least she went out with a bang. Plus, she got the last laugh when she was declared a saint about 500 years later. I guess that's one way to stick it to your haters. And there you have it, the life and times of Joan of Arc, proving once and for all that teenagers can do anything, if they just hear some voices and ignore all fashion norms. Thanks for watching. Make sure to like and subscribe for more juicy, scandalous lessons in history.